What's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster here. Still a little under the weather. Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023. It is about 12:04 p.m. here, California time. Latest activity looks like some movement into the Indonesia area. Also, some big-time uptick here across the Izu Trench. Goodness. Talking about quite a bit of earthquake activity up here. USGS showing quite a bit as well. You wouldn't know unless you zoom in onto this area of interest. Now, we've been chatting about this for a little while. Prior to all this movement today, we had seen some deeper activity, deeper earthquakes up here into the Izu Trench, followed up by shallower earthquake activity upstream around the subduction zone level itself. But overnight and this morning, goodness, it looks like we got a big-time swarm of shallow earthquakes up here at the surface level, or at least the oceanic crust level. Defaulted depth level of around 10 kilometers. That's just what they put there for the average earthquake oceanic depth, unless it's deep earthquake activity. And I believe all of these have been reviewed, so they'll probably stay at that current level. Over the past 12 hours or so, let's see what we've got. The latest one shows a 5.8 in this mix of earthquakes. Prior to that, earlier this morning, we've seen quite a few 4s, including a 6-pointer, about 4 o'clock this morning, local time here, my time in California. 5.0, about 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm not certain if this is 4 shocks or if this is it. With this type of setup here, this could be looking at something much bigger brewing out here against the Izu Trench and area. These are very shallow earthquakes away from the plate boundary here, which is rather odd. So that means there's quite a bit of strain from this big bad boy right here, the Pacific Plate. Now the Pacific Plate pushes up, literally pushes up right against the Filipino Plate. That's where all this activity is occurring over here right now. The earthquake activity is occurring right about here where the hand is. Got Japan up here, Philippines, Taiwan. Now, the general northwestward pressure movement here puts a lot of strain up here against the Filipino Plate. That's where we have the Mariana Trench, the Izu Trench up here, and inland away from the subduction zone is all that shallower earthquake activity. Where that's occurring today, it's a little odd. As far as shallow movement goes, I would expect some deeper activity with that location there on the map. So this whole area is reinforced by the North America, or the Pacific Plate. Hopefully I said the Pacific Plate. North American Plate's over here. Along with the North American Plate up here for a subduction zone. And then you got the Eurasia Plate adding some further strain for the Filipino Plate. It's just getting bullied by some major plate stress out here. Not to mention the Australia Plate. Look at these arrows. Where are they all pointing? Right here. That's a general location of a lot of plate stress out there. And that's just a little on the crazy side to see shallow earthquake activity out here. Let me see what we got for historical movement here. Pull this up. Bear with me. I just got a little cold going on. Now, all right, here's the subduction zone areas. Shallow earthquake activity in the white circle. Let me bring up the key here so you guys can see. This is the Izu Trench. Where today's activity is occurring, it's mostly deeper movement quakes. A little bit of shallow earthquake activity up there as well. But the further left you go here on the map, further inland away from the plate boundary, that's when you get the super deep subduction zone earthquakes, which add strain up here. Now, let me see what we've had in the past couple days. Let me pull up these earthquakes. Past couple days, we've seen, well, it looks like it's in the same area as today's swarming. And these are all shallow earthquakes. I'm wondering if, let's see here. Yeah, even the EMSC models look like they're reporting shallow earthquakes there. Now, a couple days ago, I think these were a little bit deeper movement quakes here. Unless I was dreaming, I don't know. It's a little weird. I thought some of these were deep movement quakes followed up here by surface activity. So I'm not for sure what happened, but because you know, if you recall on my last update, or maybe the update before that, I was chatting about how subduction zones give a little trigger, right, or a little signal of stress, deeper activity followed up by surface activity. And in this case, it looks like all of those magnitudes I was discussing have reverted to the 10-kilometer defaulted depth there. So these may not be deep earthquakes after all, which tells me right there that there's some incredible strain out here. We're not getting any subduction zone quakes down in to the areas that we would expect. That means stress up here is incredibly high across this region. I'm kind of curious to see what we got for historical large-scale movement out here across the Izu Trench. Now I definitely know that this can get quite big out here as far as the earthquakes go. I want to check out, let's go 6.5 and above, and this is just what the USGS has kept here. I'm sure it doesn't go back to the year 1000. That's just what I put in there. I'm going to draw a little rectangle, square, triangle, whatever, just to make it work here and kind of see what we got as far as earthquake activity. I don't want to cover too much of Japan Trench here because we know that area can see some large earthquakes. I just want to cover right around this area here and check it out. Let's see what we got. All right. There's a lot of our deeper quakes. Look at that. See, away from the plate boundary. This plate boundary here, inland. That's where you see those large, deep, 664 kilometers deep. Goodness, earthquakes. So I was expecting some of those quakes that we've seen this morning to be deep, but they're not. So the largest, at least so far in this area, looks to be, of course, up here around the ridge, this little Kumano Ridge area off the coast of Japan, is another subduction zone. You can see the subduction zone on the oceanic crust here. Filipino plate diving underneath this area, underneath this plate, underneath the Eurasia plate as a whole. This area is moving. It's going to get swallowed up, I think, eventually. Because you got subduction zones over here. You got the trench, Mariana Trench. So, okay, 8.3... that's up here off of the plate boundary. There's an 8.1 closer to Japan. Now the Izu Trench here looks like we can see close to an 8-pointer. The last one looks to be back in... let's go here real quick and see what we got. I want to check out... oh, let's just look this up here real quick. Well, I mean, 7.9, that's somewhat within the Izu Trench right here. 7.4, that's a little bit further south. 7.9 was back in 1953, so a little bit of buildup here. 7.4, 1972. 7.4 over here around the Kumo Ridge. Izu Islands, 7.3, 1956. 7.2, 1972. So, specifically... up here around this subduction zone area, I want to see what we have for the latest activity. 2009, a little bit of time has passed here since that earthquake. Of course, 2011, we had that big, humongous mega quake up in Japan, that 9-pointer. What was it, 9.2, 9.3? I can't remember. So many magnitudes to keep track of these days. So a little bit of time has passed here since we've seen the... large-scale activity. Goodness, the last 7-pointer specifically up around the subduction zone area was back in 1972 for that 7.4. Now, of course, inland there's been some large deep-scale activity quakes, but again, those are way down there. Old as well, 1928, 1984, 2011 is 6.8. That was following the Japan earthquake, the 9-pointer up there. So this area, I think, could potentially be primed for some larger scale movement. Look at this little seismic gap right here that we're looking at. You guys see that? Now, I know the center of the epicenter is not really going to tell us the telltale sign of how much of the fault system ruptured out here or how much of the subduction zone moved, so to speak. But to me, it looks like there's a little seismic gap right here, right where we're seeing that earthquake activity today. Let me pull that back up and see what we got. Maybe it's a little bit further up north. North of this little ridge here, it looks like. No, that's right. Here's where that... I don't want to pronounce that wrong. But it looks like this is where the activity is occurring right now. Back in 1982, 6.8, 175 kilometers deep, 6.7, 184 kilometers deep back in 1970. But we're not seeing deep activity. We're seeing shallower activity. And that leads me to believe that these crustal quakes out here are experiencing some quite big strain. So, got to watch this area. Look right here, right across this area where we're seeing right here. There's a gap right here. As far as large-scale activity goes, that seismic gap could fill in. Eventually, it all does, right? So we'll keep an eye on this area. Goodness. That's just quite the earthquake swarm happening there across the Izu Island, Japan region. See if I got any seismograph stations over there. Japan's sometimes hard to key up. And in fact, I tried here a couple days ago. I couldn't get any of these to bounce up. May have to reset this little program here that monitors activity. Here's the Mariana Islands. That's somewhat close. See if these are working. Yeah, these look like they're working, so that wouldn't be a bad one to watch around Guam. I'll adjust this here in a little bit, but yeah, goodness, that's quite the activity stirring up there. All right, we did see some movement yesterday here into the Papua New Guinea area. That has since died off, and most of the activity is stirring up here across the northwestern corner of the Pacific Ring of Fire. 4.5, a little deeper activity here earlier this morning, about 10 o'clock or so. 314 kilometers deep for that 4.5. Some activity from yesterday there in New Zealand. See what we got on the globe. Looks like a little bit further activity down around South Island area, but for the most part this area has gone quiet within the last 24 hours after being seismically active. We did see some earthquake activity around Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, and New Guinea area. So this has gone quiet. The adjustment is taking place further west and also now up into the western areas of the Pacific Ring of Fire where the Izu Trench is. So we'll keep an eye on this, folks. This, of course, the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench up here in the north, I think this was long overdue for a big major earthquake. Not for sure what the stress... I got to find my other plate here, or the other map. I did have the subduction zone slip rates up here, but I don't know what I did with it. I thought I had it up here, but it's gone. But the slip rates up here are quite high. The strain itself, if you look at the... let's go back here at the map. There's so much pressure being applied in this area due to the Pacific Plate, North American Plate from the north, the Eurasia Plate from the northwest, all colliding in this area. Subduction zones, huge volcanoes. It's very tectonically active, big time, and it doesn't take thousands of years for stress to build up in these subduction zones to create a megaquake. So keep an eye out. Just like I say, right outside this area here, there's that seismic gap zone. So keep an eye on the Izu Trench over the next couple days. I mean, that's a good swarm. All right, we did see some further movement over here in Nepal. Remember, we were just chatting about that, how this has been pretty quiet. Now, this activity is light compared to what it can get across this area of the subduction zone, northern India. That's another zone that's just goodness. You can see it up here, 2 arrows, right? The Himalayas are some beautiful mountain ranges. I would love to visit up here one of these days. I'm not interested in climbing to the top, but to the highest peaks like some people do. But I think it'd be cool to view these at a distance. But we did see some earthquake activity, 5.7 in the Nepal area. That is in the red because it was a relatively shallow earthquake at about 20 kilometers or so. Looks like Looks like it was felt by a few folks. Pager system up into the yellow as far as the estimated economic losses there. I almost combined these two words. So just kind of picking up slightly out here. Looks like a couple other earthquakes as well. Uncertain though on if this is some foreshocks or if this is just a little bit of strain building up here in the region. This area can see some large, super large damaging earthquakes as well. Historically, I think we've seen some in the past. I'm not for sure how long ago it's been, but you can see the Himalayas out here. You can see some large these circles. Not for sure exactly how large compared with this legend, but you can get some big earthquakes out there, folks. So we'll continue to watch that area as well. A couple different areas of heightened movement. All right, let's see what's going on here across the west coast, California. A little bit of activity across the Cascades, Mount St. Helens. Still seeing some movement here after midnight or so. Just some very small microquake activity. This has been an ongoing event here for a little bit. This is just the last 30 days. We would have to go back. Let's see, minimum 0.0, and then maximum we can just put like 5 or something. But I know it's not there. I just want to go back the last last 2 months maybe. Let's go back the last 2 months. We'll go back to July and see what we have. It's a pretty good tally of earthquakes up here. And most of it has been centered right at the crater area. All right, ready? There we go. All right. And that one... Now, that's a little interesting here. Did I do point... What did I do? 0.0? I remember when we were looking at these week or so ago, a couple weeks ago, when we were having the earthquake swarm, it was up around 168. So now I go back a couple months here, and it looks like they've removed quite a few quakes from here, because now there's only 168 in the last almost 2.5 months here. So I don't know, it's a little odd. Either way, it's still a pretty good amount of earthquake activity, and you can kind of see it looks like somewhat of migration here, most of it coming from the southwestern flank of Mount Lassen. And let's go check out the seismograph stations there. If they want to do that, we're going to go check this out real quick. See what we got. I normally check out this station here. It is publicly accessible to anyone and everyone. Here's some of these other earthquakes that I'm kind of looking at. Somebody said these might be rock falls, but I don't think so. Earthquakes here. These are definitely earthquakes. Some of these other events, I'm not for sure what they are. They look a little odd. It could be deeper movement quakes because they're not quite as well defined. They're a little thick on the graph. But these here as well look a little... It doesn't look like it's quiet, is what I'm saying. It just looks like there's definitely some more earthquake activity occurring up there than what is being stated. Now, those are not big earthquakes, because if they were, they'd be showing up here a lot on this seismograph station, more so. But you can see some of them still are. So these may be, around 1 to 1.5, maybe 2s. I don't know. It's hard to tell on each different graph, but some of those signatures are showing up on this one as well. So we'll just continue to watch Mount St. Helens. I don't see any major changes here across the gas monitoring stations here. Carbon dioxide looks about neutral. Sulfur dioxide, there was a peak back in early September. I think it was on the 2nd or 3rd, so this graph is not going to show it. It was literally like a peak, little rise in these dots, much more so than this when the earthquake swarm kicked up. So, a little bit of up and down pattern. That's very typical. I don't see any major elevated spikes like we had seen prior to where this graph is back on the 2nd of September. Again, we'll just watch that and see how see if it wants to kick up or not. Northern California, low activity outside of Portola. 2.4 and a 2.3 yesterday. A little bit of activity this morning as far as movement goes. Nothing really going on out here across the Cascadia for now. The rest of California, a little spotty movement. Long Valley supervolcano. Someone asked me why I don't really cover that. Why we don't cover it. Well, we do when there's earthquake swarms, but right now there's really not a lot going on. And you can check this area as well, far as the general instruments and whatnot here. The USGS has actually a really cool site here that lets you monitor all this stuff. Long Valley Caldera. You can go over here. Everything's green for now. And for the most part, these seismograph stations have been working because I remember we did have a little swarm here, I think it was last year. A pretty good swarm, and then it just died off. So I know some of these seismograph stations are working. That one's working, but it looks like it may have lost some data offline. Let's see what else we got here for Long Valley. It's really these, I don't know what's going on with this blackout there, but a couple earthquakes, right? And those are probably the ones that we've seen on the seismograph stations. This one occurring about 4 or 5 hours ago, and going to be one of these. That kind of looks like a 2.6 or so, but I don't see anything major going on there across that super volcano. California, what do we got down here? I dropped my voice there. Did you guys hear that? Whoa, what's going on? It's hard to tell, right? You would never know. A little small microquake activity until you zoom in and see a swarm going on out here across the Salton Sea. Goodness. All right, so what do we have here? All right, southern branch of the San Andreas Fault here is definitely capable of producing an 8.1. That's the given magnitude that geologists and scientists and seismologists and whatnot and folks of science agree on that can take place out here along the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. And we got a little earthquake swarming occurring off of it on the extensional fault system here called the Brawley seismic zone. I was down here a few years back investigating a pretty good swarm as well. I will never go back down there. It's horrible. I mean, far as the smell goes, and the just the general, I don't know. It was. I came back with a headache. I was sick for a little while after that too. So, some toxic algae stuff out there in the sea, I think, was blooming at the time. I wasn't aware of, but yeah. So a little bit of earthquake swarming occurring. Nothing big. Looks like so far the largest at 2.4. This stirred up about, and that was over here. Following that movement, it looks like when the swarm kicked up here with a bunch of 2s and 1s following this activity. So it looks like strain may be increasing out here. Now it is a couple miles off of the San Andreas Fault. I don't know if it's in that triggering zone or not. You know, a lot of people, Dr. Lucy Jones, she likes to chat a lot about earthquake science and whatnot, and I find some of her interviews and whatnot very useful. Some of it I agree with, some I don't, but hey, that's what makes us all different, right? But I do believe in the triggering zone out here. I do believe if we get earthquake swarms really close to the to a plate boundary that's been long overdue, locked and loaded, sprung as tight as can be, I do believe that that could trigger a little domino effect, so to speak, here across the plate boundary, right? That this whole area is pretty much ready to go. It's been over 300 years since the southern segment here has seen any major earthquake activity. So I'm gonna watch that. Looks like the last activity was let's see when the last earthquake was. About 8 o'clock this morning. 1.6. I'm kind of curious about something. But about the same time as that 5.8 there on the opposite side of the plate. Yeah, so all these things move around kind of like I don't know exactly what to compare them to, but these plates just move around and build up strain in certain regions, while other areas may see, like kind of like a release of pressure with migration of pressure going on. And when was this activity over here? This was about 6 o'clock this morning. Yeah, so hard to say right now. I mean, a lot of times we'll be able to see that little teeter-totter effect that I chat about a lot, where the western areas over here are pretty active, the eastern areas are quiet. But in this case, hard to say. Yeah, we got portions of Southern California lighting up, but for the most part, the West Coast looks fairly quiet as a whole. But it's just this general area here that I'm kind of watching that shows elevated activity. So we'll see if this kicks back up. I do have a couple seismograph stations down there monitoring that, and it's going to be this station right here, Barrett BHZ station there in Southern California, and that's it's probably right around here or so, in between the Salton Sea and San Diego areas where that station is. But if there's any earthquake activity, for the most part, it will pick up the general microquakes out here as well. But for right now, it kind of looks a little quiet. But we'll keep an eye on that with that earthquake swarming kicking off there in the Southern California area. Excuse me. I'm getting better. I'm trying. Yellowstone National Park, a little bit of activity stirring up there as well. We're checking this out last night, and really wasn't a whole lot to look at, but it looks as though, what do we got here? So this is yesterday. There's the earthquake there around Japan earlier this morning, Izu Islands. There's that 5.8, 6-pointer, 5.8. Looks like we got a little bit of swarming kicking up here at Yellowstone right now, centered over the Purple Mountain area. It looks to be the location of the strongest reading here. Not a lot, but these things can kick up pretty drastically. Let me go back to the USGS map and see what we got for their reporting. Looks like a handful of earthquakes in this little fashion here. That's kind of neat. Now these here are showing about 7 o'clock in the morning. Now I know it's still not 7. I don't want to go back to 7 o'clock in the morning. So what's going on here? Why is there a little bit of time errors in this? Last one, 7 o'clock in the morning, right? UTC time of here is going to be 1438. 1438. Okay, I see. 1438 is going to be these little, very small little specks that they were counting this morning. But now we got a little bit of bigger stuff coming in. They haven't quite got to these in the last, looks like last hour and a half. You guys see that? A little bit bigger, showing up quite nicely. So yeah, they haven't even gotten to that. Hopefully they will. It is lunchtime, right? Somewhere around, it was 12:30 here. But yeah, so some of that activity USGS is reporting on the map is the smaller magnitudes, these little bitty ones here. But now we're seeing a more defined little earthquake activity there across the region. So we'll watch that. See, I know I have a Yellowstone station here keyed up. I got to get rid of a few of those Mariana Island stations. I do have Lake Yellowstone keyed up here, but Lake Yellowstone is not the one having the earthquake swarm. I may have to look over here, see what I can find. Either way, looking at these magnitudes here, they all look to be below 2.0. Even these right here. So for the most part, an earthquake won't be produced, or at least a notification won't be produced until someone reviews these and then puts that notification out to the earthquake catalog there on the USGS. Now, if this is above 2.5, then the automatic computer system will put out that preliminary magnitude 2.5 or larger for Yellowstone, and then once it gets reviewed by a seismologist, and they make the adjustments accordingly. But for now, it looks like just smaller earthquake activity here, but again, some of those on the graph are showing larger than a 1.0, so probably getting close to a 2 with some of these occurring within the last hour or so. So we got that, a little bit of movement stirring up there. What else do we have here? A little scattered activity throughout the rest of the country here today. Got some movement out into the New Madrid seismic zone. Looks like both of these from yesterday, though. Let's see what else we got. Divergent boundary activity across this little fracture zone near the Panama Basin. 4.6 off the coast of Central America, 14 kilometers deep. A little bit of strain working its way here across this area. One lonesome earthquake down here outside of Santiago, Chile from yesterday. Look at the earthquake 3D globe here. Doesn't show too much movement down here across the South America region for now. Yeah, more earthquakes coming into California, 1.4, 1.3. This one's up on the San Jacinto fault zone, but well, keep an eye on this. These earthquake swarms, they come and go, but goodness, what do we got now? Another 5.3 over here. Now this one's deep. Or so it shows, 517 kilometers deep. I don't think it's been reviewed yet. It has been reviewed. Okay, that's pretty quick. So I still think there's something bigger brewing out here, folks. Something of incredible pressure that's building up here against this plate boundary. Watch this area today. I mean, it's showing pretty nicely that it wants to produce something big potentially. Now, when was that quake? 12:16, so about 15 minutes ago. Really not seeing that showing up down here across the Mariana Islands. I'm not for sure why. I know there's some distance, but sometimes, I mean, a 5.3 should show up. I'll have to see if I can find something closer here. It'd take me a few minutes to find it, so I'll do that after this update video. I'm just kind of curious to see what's going on there. It's bigger scale movement taking place, or about ready to take place, I believe. All right, let's check out space weather activity here. See what we got. We're still looking at that beautiful, huge filament that's just pointing right at us right now. We're just about ready to. Well, watch this maybe in the next couple days. See if this thing decides to shoot off and head our way. That will definitely stir up space weather activity here on Earth if that does. But for now, things look fairly green across the board. Looks like a 55% chance there on the 5th. Let's see what's going on. No, it doesn't look like it. Looks like they may have messed up the numbers here. But we'll check back on that. I don't think that's accurate there on this page. Really nothing major going on for the auroras for now. Space weather activity in terms of solar flares and sunspots. Well, these look like they are just sitting pretty. looking right at the Earth's facing side of the sun, but they are not dynamic whatsoever. So these have just been completely wiped off the potential map. And we're left with a whole lot of unorganized, disorganized, and very wimpy looking sunspots out here. And honestly, I don't really see anything of concern far as any flaring goes at all. At all. I don't even know if I could pick one. So we're left with a couple sunspots there. Well, quite a few sunspots, but the potential for any flaring, very minimal, at least from what I can see. 99% chance for a C flare, M flare at 30, that's very generous. X-flare has remained stuck at 5%. I don't know if they forgot to change that or what. But to be honest, we're about ready to slip below the C-flare category here with the lack of complexity within those sunspots. Space weather, or storm prediction center. There we go. This looks like spring out here. Tornado potential, 5% up into Kansas. Goodness. And also covers, looks like, a portion of Nebraska as well. That's in the 5% zone. Green at 2%. This is just the general area where the most dynamics are set up in terms of the possibilities of severe weather, and in this case, tornadoes. I think hail's going to be a huge threat out there. We got this colder, low pressure system out here spinning, interacting with the warm moisture out here, and this is just a perfect setup for big time hail. These guys up here in Kansas and Nebraska are going to get hammered, I think, with some huge hail today. Let's see what we got. I'm probably going to be some baseballs maybe from that type of setup up there falling out of the sky. Well, it looks like may struggle beyond golf ball size. But here on this map, these guys are stating significant severe hail, 10% or greater probability of 2-inch diameter hail or larger within 25 miles of a point. So we'll see what the storm prediction reports show a little bit later on this evening once they put out that update. For now, stay safe out there and keep an eye on this region, folks. I think we're not through chatting about this yet. Have a good one. I'll catch you guys back here later today. Also, I got some new shirts here. I'm going to show them. I'm going to make a little video today and show you guys the new shirts that are coming in from a different company, and they're very good quality. I'll chat about them here a little bit later on in a separate video that I'll upload here to the channel. Take care. Stay safe out there.